Welcome to Lead Smarter, Not Harder, your stop for how to stand out as a leader. I'm your host, Jason Davis, and this week I'm joined by Justin Eggar, CEO of Quantum Assurance International, as we talk about shifting your mindset to embrace failure and how managers can learn from taking more risk. Let's go! All right. Well, wanted to get together today and really take a deeper dive into getting comfortable with risk and failure. The topic that is something I've been digging a little bit more into myself personally. It's something that was always challenging for myself, even in a corporate world anyway. So wanted to bring in some expertise and expand on this topic a little bit. So today, I'm joined by Justin Eggar, who is the CEO of Quantum Assurance International. Just to give a little bit of background, Justin spent several years in the Navy, serving in Iceland, Italy, and had various leadership roles throughout that time. He was also the previous CEO of Eggar Insurance Services, as well as Lion Talent Solutions. And most recently, as I mentioned, as of 2019, the CEO of Quantum Assurance International. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So what did I miss in your background? Fill us in.
Well, life is not linear. And so, there's a lot of interesting moving parts there, like we all have in life. But I think that you covered a good portion of it. Obviously, like my social media and speaking to your podcast, what it doesn't say is it has probably my ups and ups more than my downs on there. And we'll certainly get into that.
No, that's great. Appreciate you adding that in. So, a few weeks ago, I approached you about getting together to talk about this topic. So, tell us a little bit. Why did you agree to talk to me about this? Why are you passionate about it? What are you so open to talking about? Getting comfortable with risk and failure and things like that.
I am passionate about it because, for one, I've experienced a lot of it, in my lifetime, and most of us have. Most of us don't live a Pollyanna existence, but I care about humanity, right? And I don't mean that I'm not a beauty pageant here. I mean that in as much as everybody around us is a human being, and so if we can create some value, if we can try and help somebody else, if we can help them understand that the failure that they might be experiencing right now is just a blip on the radar and something that they can grow through and be better for, then I'd certainly be thrilled to be a part of that, which is why I want to jump on this, maybe share some of my own experiences, and also encourage people to not look at risk and failure as a wall or as a one-dimensional thing, but viewed as having multiple facets to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love how you really started with being a human, right? And just really, everybody is human and everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And, really showing that care for being able to make a mistake and learn from it, I think is what's really important. Hopefully you're not making those same mistakes over and over again. It might take us a couple rounds to finally figure it out, right? But each time we're learning from it a little bit. But I think it's starting with that perception that it's human, right? It's human to make mistakes. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and Jason, as part of my own, let's just call it Genesis. When I left the corporate world, back in the end of 2010, because I was starting my own business, I had no idea what I was doing. I was so underprepared, ill-equipped. All I knew is I had this dream of doing something. But really, I didn't have a lot of the things that I probably should have had, going into that thing. What I did have is grit and determination and, the desire to never give up on things in life. And so, part of the reason this is something near and dear to me is that in those early years, and certainly to today, I experienced failure. In those early years, I failed nonstop. And I don't mean my business, was constantly going out of business. But what I mean is, I did things wrong constantly. I did the wrong thing. I focused on the wrong thing. Just everything that could break. I learned everything the hard way. And so, and that's okay. I mean, that was my journey, and I'm certainly better today because I had to learn the lessons the hard way. But, I think that, and you and I joked about it a little bit in kind of our messages going back and forth. We all have a laundry list of failures in our lives, of things that have happened around us, to us, but don't define us. And if we can learn from those things, then we have the chance of creating something pretty incredible out of what occurred in those instances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that, and thanks for adding that in. I really appreciate that. So let's dive in a little bit deeper here and talk about really why this is important, why and for me, even why I wanted to have a conversation about this kind of coming into it, really thinking about failure and taking risks as a necessary way to solve problems, to move forward, to try different solutions, really thinking about it from an innovation standpoint as well. And like I said, identifying problems, solving those, and moving that forward in a way that allows the business to grow. Let's talk a little bit more about some of your own experience with failure and taking risks. Is there a particular story or event that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, not all failures are total events, you know what I mean? And so I'll give you an example of the first year that I started my business. I was working with an organization, and it was 2011, and the organization had set goals for us. And I was a contractor, but the organization had set goals for us to achieve awards and a bunch of different stuff along those lines. And so I built out a business plan to hit their goals, and so it was an insurance agency. And that first year, I wrote 400 renters policies because our goals were to write a lot of renters and toys and that kind of stuff. We called it emerging business. But what happened then is the next year, the goals changed, and the goals then became, how much bundling do you have? And if your listeners are not in insurance, they might not care, understand this segment. But anyways, the goals changed completely and flipped to 100% opposite direction, because writing renters insurance, it doesn't at all align with bundling and that kind of stuff. And so I found myself in a place where the goals that made me successful that year were my undoing the next year in hitting, kind of my metrics and numbers. And, so there's obviously smaller and larger failures in life. What I learned along the way is that the business that I'd written wasn't what was best actually for my business that I had. It didn't give me the highest profitability. It didn't help me put food on the table for employees, and do any of those things, but it hit somebody else's goals. And so, along the way, I realized that it's okay to listen to others, and it's okay for others to have goals, but we can't let others' goals define who we are. And people's goals for us shouldn't define, the large scale, things that we're trying to accomplish in life. We have to have those own things that are near and dear to us internally, and help us accomplish our master plan of what success is and what that looks like. And so that was an area, I laugh about that, speaking with in the industry and insurance. I laugh about that switch, but it was a really pivotal learning moment for me, that I had to stop placing so much weight in what others want from me. And I have to make sure that my standards and my goals align with who I want to be and where I want to go in life.
Yeah, I love that. And, even the story that you told, right? 1 year goals were this, next year something, it was this. And it's that, it probably gets back more to kind of climbing the ladder from a leadership standpoint, but it's the old adage of, what got you here won't get you there. Right.
Absolutely.
So it's always like, all right, now you hit that. What's the next level up, right? You've got to do something that's a little bit more significant and different to get there. This just seemed like it was a little bit unplanned from your perspective anyway. Or unexpected, probably a better way to, unexpected is probably a better way to look at it. So for you in that moment, kind of thinking, getting to that point of saying, okay, I've got to do something different. What was that aha moment, and kind of how did you work past that just internally? Because that takes a lot for a person on their own, right? To admit mistake and then move forward. So how did you do that? What was that process like?
I wish it was some sophisticated, beautiful process. In reality, like most of our lives, it was not that thing. It was trying to figure out, my cheese got moved. How do I figure out how to navigate that thing? And part of it was, okay, well, I certainly want to accomplish those goals because there's things tied to that thing. But also, I try and sit back and say, okay, well, this is the tactical thing that I have to do. This is this thing I need to do to be successful. But also, what is the larger picture life lesson that I can learn from this thing? And everything that we have that we're doing, we can apply it personally and professionally, to what we're doing. And so these life lessons, and if you're a manager and you're working on something, if you're learning something new, you're going to have the opportunity to learn things that help you grow professionally. A lot of that stuff has a direct line correlation back to your home life and your personal life, and things that you can be doing better across the board. And so that was really what this was, is that I figured it out professionally. I figured out how to navigate. I figured out how to still win in that area. But then I also had that aha moment of, oh, you know what? This isn't just about the workplace. This is also about me and who I am.
No, I like that a lot, and I think it speaks a little bit to not making it harder or more complicated than what it really seems, right? And I think the way that you're able to say, okay, whether professionally or personally, these are I can kind of work through things in some of the same ways, right. And it works the other way as well.
Certainly.
There's things that I do in my personal life that I've found have been very beneficial from a professional standpoint. I do a lot of data gathering and stuff in Excel for my own personal reasons, outside of, I gather a lot of sports data. We'll just keep that as it is. But I've been able to do a lot of things from, just a probability standpoint and trying to predict different outcomes and stuff like that, from learning things on the personal side and turning that into work product as well. So
I'm curious, there's an offline conversation that has to be had of how you've applied that in your personal life. And
yeah.
How many times have I failed in asking my spouse this thing? I could probably learn some lessons from you on that one.
Yeah, we can get into that for sure. That's for sure. All right. So let's get into a little bit about managers and failure. Really big topic for me anyway, and really the audience that I'm looking to support here. So how can we start talking about managers and failure and getting comfortable with that? What are you seeing, that kind of is really standing in front of people there, and what's working?
Yeah. I think one of the first things we have to ask ourselves is, can we afford to not fail, right? As an organization, as people, can we afford to not fail? And because what does that mean if we don't fail, And I'm right fairly frequently. I have a reasonable a chance of success. But sometimes that's also because I'm risk averse, right? I manage my risk very heavily these days, but that means that we're not innovating. It means that we're not changing, And so, you and I have experience in the insurance world. Look at all these organizations that manage their risks so tightly, and it just became purely about that thing. And how do you squeeze that 1 or 2 or 3% profitability? And like, this thing is completely on rails. And now look at the hundreds of insurtechs that have started up, right? Look at all these groups that have started up because they've said, you know what? There's a business model that exists in that risk. And the organizations that don't have the grit to figure that out, we're going to do that thing, and we're going to change the insurance space. So I think we have to be, the first reason that we have to be okay with it is because the alternative to failure is no growth, not risking anything, and a stagnant life, personally and professionally. So I think, we all need to start working on being okay with risk. Now, to go back to the human element, I'm more okay with it than most people, just because I understand, I spent a fair amount of time thinking about the human condition and the fact that we are all imperfect in our own way. And as such, if we really care about humans and we understand that we're all imperfect, we also need to give people the space to grow, the space to have failure, the space to break things. And so it's the right thing because it's going to, to correct the first point, it's the right thing because it is the thing that's going to change the world. It's going to give you a competitive advantage when you're willing to grow and other people won't. But as human beings, it's also the right thing because we need to be tolerant of each other and help each other grow and be supportive of each other, and know that for others and ourselves to grow, there's going to be things that break along the way. So when, as an organization, we break things a lot. We have grown dramatically. We're a startup. Anybody that's ever been in a startup environment, if you are unwilling to break things in a startup environment, it's the wrong space for you, and it's going to be a lot of stress and little reward. And so some of your listeners that are in that space are probably chuckling right now, because it is interesting. You know what I mean? But I think that, from a role model perspective, if we look at people that break things, I mean, look at Elon Musk, right? And obviously he's the go-to for the planet for innovative things. But look at how many rockets actually crash. I mean, we're all watching that, and I love space, and I love what they're doing. But look at how many failures they actually had, catastrophic failures, just on the border of bankruptcy. They failed so many times, and then they got it right. You know what I mean? And so, when we're looking at our own growth, and when we're looking at what our managers are doing, Elon Musk was willing to crash a rocket into the ground multiple times, into a barge, I guess, to try and get it right. And so, give yourself enough room to crash and burn a little bit. Give your team members enough room to crash and burn a little bit, because on one of those flights, I don't recall if it was the fourth or fifth or sixth or whatever, whichever one it was, at some point in time, you're going to stick that landing, and something incredible is going to occur out of that thing. And, so that's kind of like the mantra we have, is that we're going to break things. I'm not afraid of you breaking things. I want you to go break things. But what I do want you to do is know that we're breaking things along the way, and make sure people are informed. And so you're not breaking things, that nobody knows about. So for me, it's a bigger thing of, please raise the flag that things are breaking and let us know, and don't hide it. You know what I mean? And if you're in a workplace where you can't break things, then you have to hide it. And a lot of middle managers and a lot of entry level managers hide their failures. They hide their break points, because they're thinking through, what about my career? What's this mean for my bonus? What's this mean for all these different things? And that's a culture that isn't conducive to kind of exponential growth and the things that we have to accomplish as we try and change and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, right? That just openness to break things. And I think, it sounds like that you create a great message from the top around, hey, we're going to break some things. It's going to be okay. We'll fix them, hopefully, as we're kind of working through this. Not everybody has that kind of luxury, right? Where maybe people are open to risk and failure and breaking things, but they're not saying it. That happens. And then some where there is no patience for that, right? It's perfect all the time. So I think a lot of that messaging comes from the top, and it's important to continue to say that over and over and over again, so that everybody knows that, okay, we're going to make mistakes around here. We don't have to be perfect. And then it's where do you learn? Where do you move past that? And how do you grow as the organization? Kind of getting down.
And I think Jason, a lot of it's built on humility, and I'm not saying that I'm this incredible person. I think that I'm certainly not, but I am human. I break things. I fail, and so from a leadership team at Quantum, we break things and we own it. And sometimes we make mistakes, and we bring in a new marketing source, and it throws things off, and what we do is we say, whoops, so sorry for doing that. We kind of apologize if people have been negatively impacted. We try and go back and learn from the lesson that we have. But, we don't exist in an environment where we have to be perfect ourselves. And I think that, us making this environment one where we can apologize, we can have humility, we can say we're sorry that we're human too sometimes, and these things happen. That gives our middle managers, that gives our kind of our front line the authority, the ability. They're empowered to know that, hey, you know what, I can break that thing and I can tell somebody about it, and it's not going to be the end of the world. They're going to work with me, and I'm going to have somebody that supports me in fixing that thing and trying to figure out what to do with what remains of it. Versus, you mentioned having to be in a perfect environment, and so we all know that that's not the thing here, and I think that we're all very okay with it.
Yeah. I heard somebody giving a speech one time, and they talked about how on their team, they celebrate the screw up of the week. There's more expletive than that than in their description anyway, but they celebrate that. It's like a badge of honor that they wear within their team. And that's something, like I said, it just starts to become part of your culture. And then, you can walk onto that team and without anybody even telling you that mistakes and failures are accepted, you get a very clear answer there.
No, that's great. And we should all probably do a lot more of that. And, there's so many fun things that you can do with team members and ways that you can try and build out your culture. And, we put a lot of thought into how to be intentional with culture. We don't do that, but, if I could wrap my head around it, we just might.
Yeah. Maybe find a way. All right. So thinking again about managers, what are most managers missing when it comes to failure and risk?
I think that the managers get stuck on the fear component of this thing. The negative outcome of it can be turned into such a large mountain in their minds that they're just afraid of taking risk. And so, even in work environments where you have a great leader, that would be accepting of this stuff, our own, level of being self-critical, which we all have, since we all live in the perfect world of Instagram and whatever else, we're all relatively self-critical. But I think that they don't understand that risk and breaking things is in most cases just this thing. You know what I mean? It's a small thing. Typically, it's a thing that can be fixed frequently. It's a thing that so don't treat it like it's this thing that you have to carve out and you can't have them and you can't have discussions with. And so I'd say that being more open to it yourself. If you're listening to this, don't expect your leader to come to you and say, hey, you know what, go break some stuff for me. That'd be great. I'd love it if that happened.
Right. Yeah. But
be the one that's willing to drive that conversation and start pushing and breaking things a little bit, and just make sure you communicate along the way that this is the reason that we're doing that. And I'm trying to achieve something bigger and greater, and I'm trying to innovate. And hopefully they're supportive of that, and if they're not, that's probably a different podcast. So
yeah, and to me, I think a lot of times, it comes down to just making decisions, right? And kind of getting back to being afraid to make a decision or being, having that fear of not doing the right thing. I would see this a lot, especially from a call center standpoint, and really kind of thinking about like call center leaders and managers and, just getting them to make a decision without having to go and get, authority from somebody else. It's like, hey, you got a customer on the line right now. They need help in some way, right? Like, let's move on this rather than making sure you've got the absolute right answer. Make a call, an educated call, hopefully, that you can work through that and that you can defend, you can stand up against. So.
Well, that drives back into decision making and how much data do you need to make a good decision. And
Sure.
And some people can make pretty good decisions with less data, and some people, they're really trying to get that data level to 100%. And that almost never happens. And so especially in going back to being a startup, we're constantly trying to figure out how much data do we actually need to make a good decision on this thing. And so as you're looking at risk, as you're looking at making decisions, there's a lot of value add in being able to pivot quickly and make decisions like they, on the spot or, whatever else. You just have to make sure that you're comfortable with the amount of data that you have to make that decision. If you're at 100%, that's probably a little too much. I'd tone it back from that. If you're making decisions with 50%, that might also be too low. And so some happy medium is probably a good place.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you touched on it probably a couple points throughout the conversation, but what are you doing at Quantum to really encourage taking risks and failures, or anything that you're kind of specifically calling out or acting on to promote that behavior?
I think just speaking about it, is one of those things, being open and transparent about it. So us, showcasing our failures at the top, I'm not getting the tattoo, but I'm certainly, having the conversation of this is what went wrong. This is why it went wrong. Let's do this. This is an example of how I make my mistakes and what this means. And, also I think when people make mistakes, going through and having conversations about what that means and not only getting through it, but also, don't go back and stress out about this thing. I don't want you staying up until 3 a.m. at night, because you're so focused on this error that you had. And so, really, a lot of our focus is culturally having conversations and being open with it. We read a book called Radical Candor a little while back, and you've probably read it at some point in time. Good book. Certainly worth a read if you have a young, fresh team, or if you have. A lot of people miss out on how they communicate effectively, and it's either too harsh or it's not having the conversations that they need to have to be impactful. And so we try to have radical candor in our organization with, hey, these are the risks that we face. These are things that are going to break, and we're okay with these things, and not protecting people more than we need to. With that thing, so that we can have real conversations, and they can also understand, all the learning points along the way. So us internally having radical candor, I think, is good. And by the way, my team tells me that I'm wrong, and I love that, And so it'll be funny because we'll be in a meeting and somebody will push back on me and say this thing, and I said, well, yeah, I hope you have data for me on what you're saying, but I am human. I fail all the time. And so, there's many times where somebody will pull out the data and show me that I'm wrong. And I'm like, that's awesome. We're all better for this thing. And so, I think being open to have radical candor and communication across the organization is pivotal in embracing risk and embracing failure as a positive thing.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And just, I've not read the book. I'm familiar with it, but I'll definitely
send you a copy. I have like 20 over there. So,
all right, sounds good.
We'll connect afterwards.
But I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but, aside from, kind of creating that environment of risk and failure and acceptance of that, I feel like that also opens up more avenues for feedback from one level to the next. And you spoke to it a little bit, right? Your team tells you you're wrong often or shows you when you're wrong. But I think it kind of makes that feedback mechanism or just the approach a little bit easier, knowing that, okay, everybody's understanding that not everything we do around here is perfect. And we hope that people tell us when something's broken if we don't see it, or something's not working right anyway. So are you seeing that? Are you feeling that? Or am I off there?
And so Jason, I assume that anything I do is at best 60 to 70% effective, right? And so, when you mention doing things in a perfect capacity, I don't believe that we're doing one thing perfectly, right? Much less all of them. And so, when we're okay with knowing that we're operating at a certain level, and that if what I'm doing is 70%, I'm looking for that next thing that can get me to 71% or 70%, 72%. But when you already assume that what you're doing is imperfect, it takes away the stigma of what you're doing being imperfect. So, I just wanted to mention that because it's, I think that drives a lot of, who we are and how we embrace risk, is that we know that we're imperfect and that's, fully okay. But anyways, speaking of those rabbit trails.
Definitely. No, I appreciate you adding that in. I think that is a great connection and a great way to wrap that piece of it up. So, what are 2 or 3 things that you think managers should take away from this conversation?
Yeah. So don't be afraid of failing. Failure 99.999% of the time is not, finite. It's not going to define who you are for the rest of your life. And so first of all, be okay with the fact that you're going to fail, and don't figure out how to not fail. Figure out how to fail positively, fail forward. If I can steal that from everybody else that's using it, your failures don't define who you are. They purely define something that happened at some, point in time, and who you are tomorrow, and the thing that you're doing tomorrow, and your performance personally and professionally tomorrow can and will be better. And so, be okay with failing, because it says that at least you're doing something that's hard. At least you're doing something that is taking a lot out of you because, you're giving your best, and if you come short, that's okay. You know what I mean? Grow from that thing. And so, likewise, be open to communicating about it. And so if you're okay with failing, you need to be okay with making sure that you're communicating what's going on, and raise the flag if you need to, and say, hey, this thing happened, or I broke this thing, or I need your help. And I was just having a conversation the other day with one of our leaders, and I was saying, hey, listen, I don't mind that this thing broke. I don't mind that you failed. I said, I wish you would have told me a little more quickly than you did, because then I could have come in and supported you. I could have come in and helped, and don't hide this stuff. Don't keep this all on your shoulders, because you're losing sleep over something that just needs to be a conversation between us, and I can step in and assist you. So it's okay to break things, but make sure you're communicating that, and that, so that way there's no surprises. It's the surprises, I think, that will hurt your career the most. So if you're open and you're communicating and you're getting feedback and you're getting mentors and you're pulling in what you can so that you can fail intelligently, then when that does happen and people are aware of the risk and people are aware of what's going on, leaders don't like to be blindsided. All right. And so risk isn't bad. Failure isn't bad. Being blindsided by something is bad. And if you're going to be more aggressive in your approach to stuff, which is cool, which is what we're talking about here, then also be more aggressive in your communication, have radical candor with your leader, and be open and honest to that feedback, and have a really good, kind of communication loop with that. And then the last thing is, remember that we're human. I'm human. If you want to send me a message on LinkedIn and tell me I messed up on this, I did. There's probably things I could have said, better in this podcast. We're all human beings. Be okay with being a human being yourself. Be okay with your teams being a human being. Be okay with your leader being a human being. And in that environment, it's such a if we're going to spend as much time as we do in the workplace, Jason, let's be good to others that are in that workplace with us. And if everybody's doing that, it's going to create a place that we love, and a place that we can embrace, and a place that we're happy to do really hard things at for a long time. And so I think that's the last thing is we're human, and be okay with that.
Yeah, I love that. And you spoke about not hiding it. It reminded me of, many, many years ago, I used to have this problem where I would break our family computer a lot. But I found ways to fix it before anybody ever found out. And I never told anybody. And then one day,
glue in there,
yeah, it's like, oh, nothing ever happened. And then one day I had to change out a card, and I just started taking the computer apart. And my mom's like, how do you know how to do that? And then we have a whole conversation. I'm like, wow. But that, again, it's like, well, why didn't you tell me you like these things? I could have supported, it's a whole other conversation of I had no idea that you were interested in fixing computers and stuff like that. And, that was that early age thing. But again, back to your point of just communicating about it, especially if you found a way to solve that problem as well, that works, I think is hey, I ran into this, I tried this, and this is what happened. Right. As long as that's in, good from a compliance standpoint, then we're okay, but it's a good way to say, hey, well, what can we learn from that? And if we run into that again, is this a repeatable process or activity that we can kind of go through? It's a good way to get there. So, well,
and when you think about career growth, just kind of tie direct correlation to your conversations with your mother about your hacking skills. When you are having those conversations and you're doing stuff and you're being upfront on that stuff, I think that it's also putting your team members in a place where you are better aligned to help them grow in their careers, right? And so when they're coming to you and saying, hey, we have really open dialogue now. We're open to failure. Hey, that level of relationship and communication is going to be beneficial for them. It will also be beneficial for you, not only with them, but also, if you're pushing that upline as well. And so it was funny just, hearing you, breaking the computer and putting it back together and kind of, the genesis that kind of occurred with that. And as you were learning stuff, we're not different than that in the workplace. We're all fancy, mature adults now, but we're not that much different where we're breaking stuff. And, you're going to come across employees that love reporting and love data analysis and love all this different stuff. And, if you're helping them have good conversations with you and break a few things along the way, it's going to result in a meaningful workplace where your team members are also hopefully growing along the way and getting the best out of the workplace that you're creating for them.
Excellent point. Great addition there. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up a little bit here. So, Justin, let's talk a little bit about quantum. What's the vision? Why does it exist?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you've been on social media, you've probably seen that our mission at Quantum Assurance is to democratize insurance. And I'm kind of apolitical. I'm here to support people. But I do think, and I've been in insurance for a while now. I think of quantum in some ways as my penance in fixing the things that are broken in insurance, right? And there's so much, and so you've been in the field. Some of your listeners haven't been, but the fact that there's so many insurtechs right now trying to fix broken things in insurance kind of showcases how much stuff was broken that we were all covering up, or not like maliciously, but just it wasn't our business model to focus on those things along the way. So Quantum Assurance, we chose democratizing insurance because we know that there's a million things. And, I joke with people that this is probably the hill that I'm going to die on, but just putting our finger on one thing at a time and trying to improve that thing. And, insurance is a beautiful world where, when you have an accident or somebody passes away, that's horrible. But the thing that we can do in that moment, if we do it well, we're actually helping people and we're doing good in the world as a industry, and that often gets lost in translation with kind of the commoditization that's occurred and so on. So right now, one of our major focuses is on the distribution aspect of insurance, and so we're broken down into three different channels. We have kind of a direct to consumer channel. We have our own agency channel, and then we have our digital distribution channel that is there to help clients embrace digital forward and figure out ways to better meet their needs and reduce friction in that thing. So, but we're heavily distribution based as a philosophy because there's so many things broken in each of those areas, right? And so from the direct to consumer, quality of that side and the relationship that clients often miss is dramatically broken. And so we put a lot of resources into education and changing the dynamic of that relationship as it exists in the direct to consumer model. On the agency side, I thought that the agency model that exists with captive and independent organizations are massively faulty, and there's a lot of stuff that occurs on that side that I believe is wrong. And so this really, I built our model on that side to protect the agencies and say, you're still relevant. You need people that come in and help you be future forward and figure out how to change your business model from going out and doing stuff that my grandfather was doing 50 years ago into what's going to be relevant and what's going to keep you relevant for the next 10, 20, 50 years, and 100 years from now, we're all going to be in a different, situation. And so I don't know if I can fix all things in regards to it, but fixing the contracts, fixing the model, fixing the way that agents operate and are educated and their company pouring into them to help them be the best they can be. I'm passionate about that, partially because that was my own experience, figuring out how to start my own business and build it from the ground up was something that I had to experience, and all the hardship along with it. And us helping agents be more effective at that thing is near and dear to who we are. And then digitally, obviously, kind of the last channel. How do we acquire clients digitally online and help them make really good decisions with their insurance? And how are we really helping them embrace insurance and not view it as just a negative in their life, but view it as something that done right can be a positive for them in many respects. And so we're tackling a lot of those things. And then the last thing on top of that is then the brand of insurance, right? So back in the days of cavemen, when they first came on the scenes and things had started to commoditize insurance, along the way, insurance companies started to play in this lowbrow kind of communication and marketing about who they were. But they lost the story along the way of this horrible thing happened, and we put something together where we protected you, where we made it better for you as much as we could. You really had somebody there to support you in that thing. And so our work is also on the brand and the image of insurance, and how do we improve the relationship that we have with consumers so that they feel like we are here for them and trying to be a value add for them. and we lose some of the confrontational us versus them feel that the insurance landscape is kind of built over the years.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, the way that you described that a little bit, I think, really attaches back to our topic here really well. Just thinking about the sense of, that captive or independent agent audience, and the fact that, you're seeing that there's something still there that people still need to some degree, right?
Yeah.
It's obvious that some companies are kind of moving away from that, but you are willing to take a risk and say, hey, I'm going to specialize in this area, and we're going to focus on people that need that level of support, and kind of staying there, and I guess figuring out how to play with some of the bigger companies and things like that in some of the other space. But I think that just that alternative approach, or differing approach to how you're going to kind of come to market is huge, really.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that the companies that have said that agents are not as relevant as they used to be, they're pointing at the box that they created for agencies, right? That box that they don't like is one that they actually created along the way. Whichever company it is or whichever channel it is, independent or captive, when an organization looks back at the agent and says, we don't like this thing, what they really mean is that they don't like the box that thing exists in, right? And so what I would say is that they are right that box is antiquated. That box was irrelevant a long time ago, but the distribution, the working with somebody, them being an independent contractor, and you guys having a good relationship, that thing doesn't have to, you can change that model. You have to be willing to change that model. You have to be willing to work with those groups to adapt what they're doing. And instead of saying that this is our stagnant view of a relationship, I think instead, looking at it and saying, okay, well, the relationship has changed a little bit. The dynamic of what we're doing has changed a little bit, but how do we help them get there with us and value them as human beings? And how do we make the most of this thing, right? And so do I think that insurance agents are going to be sitting in their office and selling insurance on the phone in 50 years? I don't. For one, the government's going to outlaw any phone communication from businesses by then. So I don't think that thing is going to exist. But what happens if we change the model and instead, there's an app that agents are now selling and they're doing B2B, or how can we? So if we view it from the lens of humans are important and the idea of independent contractors and businesses across our nation and kind of the holistic, beneficial view of small business. If we believe in that thing, how do we work with this group of people to maximize what they're doing and what we're doing together with them, so that we can both benefit? And so I don't think that the model is not going to change. It has changed and it should change, but I do think that there's still a massive value add in hundreds of thousands of incredible people. And if we as an industry can figure out how to make them a part of the future, I think that they will embrace that thing, and so our agency model will not be stagnant. In 50 years, we're not going to be looking back and having the same conversation. But along the way, if I do my job right, we'll have created a pathway for them to adapt along the way and still do great things alongside of us. So,
yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Thanks for adding that in. So, all right, well, Justin, let's get into final thoughts, plugs. Where can people find you if they have questions?
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm on LinkedIn, Justin Eggar, Eggar. Feel free to connect with me. I love having a lot of great connections. And you'll see I often reference my LinkedIn family. We all spend a lot of time together. And so please do connect. Quantum Assurance is at quantumassurance.com. And maybe, Jason, we can throw that in one of the links somewhere. And so I don't have to spell it out right now.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But yeah, and if you guys have feedback or need anything, we're always happy to help, and that's what we're here for.
All right, and you're hiring too, right?
We are hiring, and so if you are in pretty much any position from frontline to CFO to in data analysis, we're hiring for a ton of different positions, and we have a great team. You'll find that first and foremost, we're looking to build our company's culture as the culture we want to be a part of and enjoy every day. And then layering on top of that, we're going to create a lot of difference along the way. And so if that's meaningful, I'd love to have a conversation. please hit me up. My email is Justin, Justin at quantumassurance.com, and feel free to send your resume, send me a note, and I'm always happy to connect.
All right, Justin. Hey, you've been a fantastic guest today. I really appreciate your insights, thoughts, everything you've been able to share with the audience today. I appreciate your time and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.